Hi everybody. I wanted to do a quick retrospective on my experience with the Intel 386 processor. Just the hardware that I used and the software that I used and my experience with my 386 computer. So I got my 386 computer I guess in about 1990, I think. And it was a IBM PS1, and I had previously had a Tandy Color computer, which I have another retrospective on, before that computer. So moving from the Tandy Color computer to a 386 computer was an enormous leap. I believe my computer came with Windows 3.0, and technology at that time moved so quickly. One of the things I distinctly remember was I had just gotten that IBM PC with Windows 3.0, and I believe it was already outdated that week. I got it about the time Windows 3.1 was coming out, and I went into the store, software store, don't remember the software store, and I think I was just looking for some games or something, and the guy says to me, "Oh, what are you running?" I said, I thought it was awesome. A 386 SX 16 megahertz, 2 megs of RAM, Windows 3.0, I believe DOS 4.0, I think. It says Windows 3.0. No, you can't run Windows 3.0. That's so buggy. You have to run Windows 3.1. So I didn't get Windows 3.1 until much later because it was very, very expensive. I forget if it was $100 or more, but it was very expensive to upgrade. So some of the first programs I had on there, it came with Microsoft Works for DOS. I forget which version, maybe 2.0 or 3.0. And it was DOS, but it had a GUI interface. You could use your mouse and get to menus and stuff. And that was pretty easy to use. And I did end up typing a lot of reports on there. I had a dot matrix printer. And one of the big disappointments was that at school, a lot of the teachers said when you did a paper that it had to be typewritten. So you couldn't just type your paper on the computer and then print it out on the dot matrix. And no one had access to a laser printer, and the dot matrix print looked pretty bad, so the teachers would say it had to be typewritten. So even though I had a computer and spell check and all this stuff, I still had to type my papers on a typewriter because they wouldn't accept the dot matrix printout because it was so ugly looking compared to a sharp, crisp typewriter, which looks like a laser printer basically. That was really disappointing. So Microsoft Works 3.0, or I think Windows 3.0. I don't recall any useful programs I had in Windows at the time, or any games. I think I just used it for solitaire and learning how to use the mouse, that sort of thing. I remember going to a store and they were actually selling shareware. I didn't know about downloading shareware. We had just gotten on Promenade, which was an early precursor to America Online, and Prodigy. And Prodigy, did they have download? America Online, the Promenade thing had a download thing. But I think it was so slow, and I didn't even really know about it yet. So I was at a mall, and they just had this rack of software, which later I found out was shareware that you could download for free. And I picked up 2 games. I got Commander Keen, the first Commander Keen, and EGA Trek. And boy, did I play the heck out of EGA Trek. And it was a great game. PC speaker sound effects, but I used to add my own sound effects and explosions and stuff. So anytime my ship would get shot, just like in the show, I'd start rocking back and forth. And you really had to use your imagination back then, which was great. Modern games, I don't have to use my imagination. There's amazing effects, and pretty soon we'll have VR helmets, and my chair is going to shake for me. But back then, I used to throw myself on the floor and roll around if I got hit by a plasma torpedo or whatever the Klingons would shoot at you in that game. So that was a lot of fun. First experience on my 386 with BBSs, dialing up BBS. I think Procom Plus, maybe. I forget what dial-in program I used, but it was through DOS. I used that on my 386, came with a 2400 baud modem. Some real games that I got, well, the shower games were real games, but full games that I got in the store were Star Trek 25th Anniversary, which ran great on my 16 megahertz SX computer. A little slow, but it was fine. Battle Chess, which was great. That was a lot of fun. Wing Commander 1. Oh man, I played that. Played through that game so many times. And Wing Commander 2 I eventually got, and that was pretty hard on my 386. I remember shooting, and it was, there was a delay on shooting, so I'd hold down the button and it would shoot, and I'd let go and it would still be shooting because it's catching up. It actually worked out to my advantage because since it was so slow, the game was pretty hard. It gave me plenty of reaction time, so when I played it on a newer computer later, it was much harder than playing it on my old 386 computer. Duke Nukem, the original Duke Nukems, Commander Keen, eventually Commander Keen 4 or something like that. Wolfenstein 3D, that game was great, and that ran great on my 386. Doom, I was never able to run Doom on my 386. Doom came out, and I still had my 386. It was really designed for a 486 with 4 megs of RAM, and I ran it through Windows, I believe, with virtual memory to get the 4 megs, and that was not playable. I just did it just to see if I could do it, but it wasn't playable. Windows programs, eventually, I think I got an early version of Visual Basic on there. I think mostly I just use Windows for gaming. I don't recall ever having my serious programs on there. I never had the money to purchase Microsoft Word. Oh, you know what? Eventually I got WordPerfect. I got WordPerfect for Windows 3.1. Yeah. Because that was a lot cheaper and it worked effectively. So I did have WordPerfect. I can't recall if I had any serious programs under Windows. Mostly everything I was using was under DOS. Even the audio players I had were DOS-based audio players. That computer took me into the future as far as my knowledge of using a computer and getting involved in IT and those sort of things, because it was really difficult to get things to work on that 386. I mean, I had to play around with the whole extended memory, 640K, to get games to work, moving things to expanded memory. I forget how all that works now in the AutoExec-BAT and ConfigSys. It was really challenging to get some games to work under those conditions in DOS. I also remember upgrading from Windows 3.0 to 3.1, and I upgraded from DOS. It was IBM PC DOS, and I put on MS-DOS 6.22 at some point. And it was really challenging. I don't recall exactly what it was, but there were some issues with going from the PC DOS to the MS-DOS, because I don't think I realized that they were two different things until I got the already paid for the MS-DOS. But I got it to work somehow. I think I wiped the whole thing. The IBM came with this sort of shell software, and eventually I kind of wiped out that shell software and just went to the DOS prompt. I used to draw pictures in Paint, just one pixel at a time, and I would spend hours and hours drawing pictures, one pixel at a time. And let's see, eventually when I moved to a new computer, I started to get really jealous. A lot of my friends had 46s and they were playing Doom, and I wasn't really compelled with Doom, but then I believe it was Dark Forces came out. Is it Dark Forces, which was Doom, but it was a Star Wars version of it. Once I installed Dark Forces, and then another friend got Strike Commander and Privateer. Once I saw Strike Commander and Privateer and Dark Forces, boy, I seriously had to get a new computer. The 2400 baud modem was also an issue. I remember being on the BBSs and everyone else was on there with 14.4 and 9600, and I had my 2400, and everyone's like, why don't you upgrade your modem? And the PS1 actually had an expansion bay that you could get for it and then put in expansion cards, but it was so expensive, and it used micro-channel memory, and that was really expensive. So I didn't really have the money to upgrade it. It actually was cheaper to just, at that point, build a custom 46 computer. But for anyone that's not familiar with the 386 SX that was in that computer that I had, there was the 386 DX, which I believe was more powerful. I don't know if it had the MathCo processor built in, because there was also the 387 chip, which was a MathCo processor. You can look it up on Wikipedia. I forget which was which, but the 386 SX wasn't as powerful. So I had this SX, 16 megahertz, no floating point. I couldn't do 3D Studio Max. A friend of mine had 3D Studio Max, and he made a pencil. And I went and I made a pencil too at his house. And I really wanted to design in 3D, but I couldn't do it on my 386 SX because it didn't have the floating point MathCo processor. But I have a board here that has a 386 SX in it. I'll try to bring it up to the camera here. It is, oh my, let's see, let me get my finger on it. This chip here, that chip there, is a 386 SX chip. No heatsink on it. It didn't generate enough heat. It wasn't powerful enough. Just a really low-end processor, but it was amazing what I could do with that. All the games that I played, all the reports that I wrote that I had to type anyway. Some of the teachers would take dot matrix, especially as computers got more popular. I sort of had this right in the beginning, and teachers were like, no, it has to be typewritten, because they didn't have a computer at home, so they were just being jerks about it. And eventually they let you do type or dot matrix print reports. I remember one time there was like a script font, and I printed out a paper with the script font, and the teacher actually wrote, I love your font, and it was so horrible. I don't know. It was dot matrix, and it was a script. Like, who does that? But back then, no one even saw that, so just seeing that, everyone thought it was amazing. Another a couple other games I had. I had Carmen San Diego. Where in the World is Carmen San Diego? And I had Print Shop Deluxe. Print Shop Deluxe. And Print Shop Deluxe, I started making cards on my dot matrix cards on my computer. So I'd work on this card, print it out on a dot matrix, and I'd give it to my parents and my grandmother as like birthday cards and Christmas cards. And of course I thought it was awesome, because it was like, wow, you made this card on your computer and you printed it out, but they were really bad. It was like this program, you used the clip art that was built into there. It's really sad, but that's what I did. And of course, since it was new technology, everyone thought it was amazing, and I totally got away with it. Where now everyone would just be like, this is a bunch of crap. So that was my experience with the 386 computer. I had that thing for years and years and years. It was a real workhorse. Learned computing on there, modern computing, Windows, MS-DOS, and got me started in the direction that I needed to go for my inevitable future career. So I hope you've enjoyed some of my reminiscings about my 386. I'd love to hear any comments about your experiences with 386 and programs that you used and how that affected your life. Thanks.